Hey, hi. It is Wednesday evening. If you guys caught my little live yesterday, I was wearing a different outfit. It is now the next day because I did not realize that I had no microphone set up into the new software program that I had downloaded. So that was very fun. Um, so it kind of counts as cheating this week because I did read these stories out loud yesterday. So it's not truly cold like we always do. And I'm sorry. Um, but I was able to just laugh about it, which some of you that watch know that that is a big deal. It just is what happened yesterday. So we're going to try again tonight. I'm watching my little audio input capture bouncing. So I'm going to say yay that it is working. And yeah, but just so you guys know, I have read these stories, um, but they are worth reading again. So I'm happy to share them with you. And we are continuing on in our Irish fairy tales. And this section that we are in right now is the fairies and sea folk. So we have more fairies tonight. And then I believe next week we move on to maybe some different kind of mythical creatures. I think I saw a leprechaun. So yeah, leprechauns next week. But tonight we have how Cormac MacArt went to Faery and the legend of Knockgrafton. So they're both a little shorter, so we've got two tonight. Yeah, so I hope you guys really enjoy these, and we will chat a little bit after. Cormac, son of Art, son of Conn of the Hundred Battles, was High King of Ireland, and held his court at Tara. One day he saw a youth upon the green having in his hand a glittering fairy branch with 9 apples of red. And whensoever the branch was shaken, wounded men and women enfeebled by illness would be lulled to sleep by the sound of the very sweet fairy music which those apples uttered. Nor could anyone upon earth bear in mind any want, woe, or weariness of soul when that branch was shaken for him. "Is that branch thine own?" said Cormac. "It is indeed mine." "Wouldst thou sell it? And what wouldst thou require for it?" "Will you give me what I ask?" said the youth. The king promised, and then the youth claimed his wife, his daughter, and his son. Sorrowful of heart was the king. Heaviness of heart filled his wife and children when they learned that they must part from him. But Cormac shook the branch amongst them, and when they heard the sweet, soft music of the branch, they forgot all care and sorrow, and went forth to meet the youth. And he and they took their departure and were seen no more. Loud cries of weeping and mourning were made throughout Erin when this was known, but Cormac shook the branch so that there was no longer any grief or heaviness of heart upon anyone. After a year, Cormac said, "It is a year today since my wife, my son, and my daughter were taken from me. I will follow them by the same path that they took." Maybe. Cormac went off, and a dark magical mist rose about him, and he chanced to come upon a wonderful, marvelous plain. Many horsemen were there, busy thatching a house with the feathers of foreign birds. When one side was thatched, they would go and seek more, and when they returned, not a feather was on the roof. Cormac gazed at them for a while, and then went forward. Again he saw a youth dragging up trees to make a fire, but before he could find a second tree, the first one would be burnt, and it seemed to Cormac that his labor would never end. Cormac journeyed onward until he saw 3 immense wells on the board of the plain, and on each well was a head. From out the mouth of the first head there flowed 2 streams. Into it there flowed 1. The second head had a stream flowing out of, and another stream into its mouth, whilst 3 streams were flowing from the mouth of the third head. Great wonder seized Cormac, and he said, "I will stay and gaze upon these wells, for I should find no man to tell me your story." With that he set onwards till he came to a house in the middle of a field. He entered and greeted the inmates. There sat within a tall couple, clad in many-hued garments, and they greeted the king and bade him welcome for the night. Then the wife bade her husband seek food, and he arose and returned with a huge wild boar upon his back and a log in his hand. He cast down the swine and the log upon the floor and said, "There is meat. Cook it for yourselves." "How can I do that?" said Cormac. "I will teach you," said the youth. "Split this great log, make 4 pieces of it, and make 4 quarters of the hog. Put a log under each quarter. Tell a true story, and the meat will be cooked." "Tell the first story yourself," said Cormac. 7 pigs I have of the same kind as the one I brought, and I could feed the world with them. For if a pig is killed, I have but to put its bones into the sty again, and it will be found alive the next morning." The story was true, and a quarter of the pig was cooked. Then Cormac begged the woman of the house to tell a story. "I have 7 white cows, and they fill 7 cauldrons with milk every day. And I give my word that they yield as much milk as would satisfy the men of the whole world if they were out yonder on the plain drinking it." That story was true, and a second quarter of the pig was cooked. Cormac was bidden now to tell a story for his quarter, and he told how he was upon a search for his wife, his son, and his daughter that had been borne away from him a year before by a youth with a fairy branch. "If what thou sayest be true," said the man of the house, "thou art indeed Cormac, son of Art, son of Conn of the 100 Battles." "Truly I am," quoth Cormac. That story was true, and a quarter of the pig was cooked. "Eat thy meal now," said the man of the house. "I never ate before," said Cormac, "having only 2 people in my company." "Wouldst thou eat it with 3 others?" "If they were dear to me, I would," said Cormac. Then the door opened, and there entered the wife and children of Cormac. Great was his joy and exultation. Then Manannán mac Lir, lord of the fairy cavalcade, appeared before him in his own true form, and said thus: "I it was, Cormac, who bore away these 3 from thee. I it was who gave thee this branch, all that I might bring thee here. Eat now, and drink." "I would do so," said Cormac, "could I learn the meaning of the wonders I saw today." "Thou shalt learn them," said Manannán. "The horsemen thatching the roof with feathers are a likeness of people who go forth into the world to seek riches and fortune. When they return, their houses are bare, and so they go on forever. The young man dragging up the trees to make a fire is a likeness of those who labor for others. Much trouble they have, but they never warm themselves at the fire. The 3 heads in the wells are 3 kinds of men. Some there are who give freely when they get freely, some who give freely though they get little, some who get much and give little, and they are the worst of the 3, Cormac." After that, Cormac and his wife and his children sat down, and a tablecloth was spread before them. "That is a very precious thing before thee," said Manannán. "There is no food, however delicate, that shall be asked of it, but it shall be had without doubt." "That is well," quoth Cormac. After that, Manannán thrust his hand into his girdle and brought out a goblet and set it upon his palm. "This cup has this virtue," said he, "that when a false story is told before it, it makes 4 pieces of it. And when a true story is related, it is made whole again. Those are very precious things you have, Mannanan, said the king. They shall be thine, said Mannanan, the goblet, the branch, and the tablecloth. Then they ate their meal, and that meal was good, for they could not think of any meat but they got it upon the tablecloth, nor of any drink but they got it in the cup. Great thanks did they give to Mannanan. When they had eaten their meal, a couch was prepared for them, and they laid down to slumber and sweet sleep. Where they rose on the morn was Entera of the kings, and by their side were tablecloth, cup, and branch. Thus did Cormac fare at the court of Mannanan, and this is how he got the fairy branch. So that was just a little one, but I liked it. I hope you guys did too. I really hope you're enjoying these Irish fairy tales. I just... I don't know. I'm just a fairy tale kind of girl, I guess. So, I really like this next one. And, yeah. Morals. There are morals in these fairy tales. But yeah, this is... Sorry, sidetracked. This is called The Legend of Knockgrafton. There once was a poor man who lived in the fertile glen of Aherlow. Alan, I called on you yesterday and it didn't record. Aherlow. It's the only time they say it, I believe. But it got me yesterday too. In the fertile glen at the foot of the gloomy Galtee Mountains, and he had a great hump on his back. He looked just as if his body had been rolled up and placed upon his shoulders, and his head was pressed down with the weight so much that his chin, when he was sitting, used to rest upon his knees for support. The country people were rather shy of meeting him in any lonesome place, for, though poor creature, he was as harmless and as inoffensive as a newborn infant, yet his deformity was so great that he scarcely appeared to be a human creature, and some ill-minded persons had set strange stories about him afloat. He was said to have a great knowledge of herbs and charms, but certain it was that he had a mighty skillful hand in plaiting straw and rushes into hats and baskets, which was the way he made his livelihood. Lunsmore, for that was the nickname put upon him by reasons of his always wearing a sprig of the fairy cap, or Lunsmore, the foxglove, in his little straw hat, would ever get a higher penny for his plaited work than anyone else. And perhaps that was the reason why someone, out of envy, had circulated the strange stories about him. Be that as it may, it happened that he was returning one evening from the pretty town of Cahir toward Capig, and as little Lunsmore walked very slowly, on account of the great hump upon his back, it was quite dark when he came to the old moat of Knockgrafton, which stood on the right-hand side of his road. Tired and weary was he, and nowadays comfortable in his own mind at thinking how much farther he had to travel, and that he should be walking all the night. So he sat down under the moat to rest himself, and began looking mournfully enough upon the moon. Mournfully enough upon the moon. Just some great turns of phrase in these stories. It makes my little heart happy. Presently there rose a wild strain of unearthly melody upon the ear of little Lunsmore. He listened, and he thought that he had never heard such ravishing music before. It was like the sound of many voices, each mingling and blending with the other so strangely that they seemed to be one, though all singing different strains, and the words of the song were these: Da Luan, da mort, da Luan, dal mort, daluan, dal mort. And when there would be a moment's pause, and then the round of the melody went on again. Lunsmore listened attentively, scarcely drawing his breath lest he might lose the slightest note. He now plainly perceived that the singing was within the mode. And though at first it had charmed him so much, he began to get tired of hearing the same round sung over and over so often without any change. So, availing himself upon the pause when the Daluan dal Mort had been sung 3 times, he took up the tune and raised it with the words August Dakadin, and then went on singing with the voices inside of the moat, Daluan dal Mort, finishing the melody when the pause again came with August Dakadin. The fairies within Knockgrafton, for the song was a fairy melody, when they heard this addition to the tune, were so much delighted that, with instant resolves, it was determined to bring the mortal among them, whose musical skills so far exceeded theirs. And little Lunsmore was conveyed into their company with the eddying speed of a whirlwind. Glorious to behold was the sight that burst upon him as he came down through the moat, twirling round and round, with the lightness of a straw, to the sweetest music that kept time to his motion. The greatest honor was then paid him, for he was put above all the musicians, and he had servants tending upon him, and everything to his heart's content, and a hearty welcome to all, and in short he was made as much of as if he had been the first man in the land. Presently, Lunsmore saw a great consultation going forward among the fairies, and notwithstanding all their civility, he felt very much frightened, until one, stepping out from the rest, came up to him and said, Lunsmore, Lunsmore, doubt not nor deplore, for the hump which you bore on your back is no more. Look down on the floor and view it, Lunsmore. When these words were said, poor little Lunsmore felt himself so light and so happy that he thought he could have bounded at one jump over the moon, like the cow in the story of the Cat and the Fiddle. And he saw with inexpressible pleasure his hump tumble down upon the ground from his shoulders. He then tried to lift up his head, and he did so with becoming caution, fearing that he might knock it against the ceiling of the grand hall where he was. He looked round and round again with greatest wonder and delight upon everything, which appeared more and more beautiful, and, overpowered at beholding such a resplendent scene, his head grew dizzy, and his eyesight became dim. At last he fell into a sound sleep, and when he awoke he found that it was broad daylight, the sun shining brightly and the birds singing sweetly, and that he was lying just at the foot of the moat of Knockgrafton, with the cows and sheep grazing peacefully round about him. The first thing Lunsmore did, after saying his prayers, was to put his hand behind to feel for his hump. But no sign of one was there on his back, and he looked at himself with great pride, for he had now become a well-shaped, dapper little fellow. And more than that, he found himself in a full suit of new clothes, which he concluded the fairies had made for him. I'm sure he concluded rightly. Oh, for the love of a song. Toward Capping he went, stepping out as lightly and springing up at every step as if he'd all his life been a dancing master. Not a creature who met Lunsmore knew him without his hump, and he had a great work to persuade everyone that he was the same man. In truth, he was not, so far as outward appearance went. Of course, it was not long before the story of Lunsmore's hump got about, and a great wonder was made of it. Through the country, for miles round, it was the talk of everyone, high and low. One morning, as Lunsmore was sitting contented enough at his cabin door, up came an old woman to him, and asked him if he could direct her to Capping. I need give you no directions, my good woman, said Lunsmore, for this is Capping, and who may you want here? I have come, said the woman, out of Deasy's country, in the county of Waterford, looking after one Lunsmore, who, I have heard tell, had his hump taken off by the fairies. For there is a son of a gossip of mine who has got a hump on him that will be his death. And maybe if he could use the same charm as Lunsmore, the hump may be taken off him. And now I have told you the reason of my coming so far. 'Tis to find out about this charm, if I can. Lunsmore, who was ever a good-natured little fellow, told the woman all the particulars, how he had raised the tune for the fairies at Knockgrafton, how his hump had been removed from his shoulders, and how he'd got a new suit of clothes in the bargain. The woman thanked him very much, and then went away quite happy and easy in her own mind. When she came back to her gossip's house, in the county of Waterford, she told her everything that Lunsmore had said, and they put the little hump-backed man, who was a peevish and cunning creature from his birth, upon a car, and took him all the way across the country. It was a long journey, but they did not care for that, so the hump was taken off of him, and they brought him, just at nightfall, and left him under the old moat at Knockgrafton. Jack Madden, for that was the humpy man's name. I'm sorry, I giggled at that yesterday. Jack Madden, for that was the humpy man's name, had not been sitting there long when he heard the tune going on within the moat, much sweeter than before. For the fairies were singing it the way Lunsmore had settled their music for them. And the song was going on. Da Luan, da mort, da Luan, da mort, da Luan, da mort, August da Cadine, without ever stopping. Jack Madden, who was in a great hurry to get quite rid of his hump, never thought of waiting until the fairies had done, or watching for a fit opportunity to raise the tune higher again than Lunsmore had. So having heard them sing it over 7 times without stopping, out he bawls, never minding the time or the humor of the tune, or how he could bring his words in properly. August da Cadine, August da Hina. Thinking that if one day was good, 2 were better, and that if Lunsmore had 1 new suit of clothes given him, he should have 2. No sooner had the words passed his lips than he was taken up and whisked into the moat with prodigious force, and the fairies came crowding round about him with great anger, screeching and screaming, and roaring out, "Who spoiled our tune? Who spoiled our tune?" And one stepped up to him, above all the rest, and said, Jack Madden, your words came so bad in, the tune we felt glad in, this castle you're had in, that your life we may sadden. Here's 2 humps for Jack Madden. And 20 of the strongest fairies brought Lunsmore's hump and put it down upon poor Jack's back, over his own, where it became fixed as firmly as if it was nailed on with 12-penny nails, by the best carpenter that ever drove one. Out of their castle they then kicked him, and in the morning, when Jack Madden's mother and her gossip came to look after their little man, they found him half dead, lying at the foot of the moat, with the other hump upon his back. Well, to be sure, how they did look at each other, but they were afraid to say anything, lest a hump might be put upon their own shoulders. Home they brought the unlucky Jack Madden with them, as downcast in their hearts and their looks as ever 2 gossips were. And what through the weight of his other hump and the long journey, he died soon after, leaving, they say, his heavy curse to anyone who would go to listen to fairy tunes again. Well, duh. Do you remember how old you were the first time you learned not to walk inside of a fairy ring? Or being very careful where you may find treasures when you are out in the woods, or some other sort of shady spot where you wouldn't think to find a little treasure? Yup. Sometimes we just let the fairy song go. We don't expect anything from a fairy. It doesn't come for free. Just doesn't. So, I hope you guys enjoyed those stories tonight. And let me know what you think of this. I know you can see the microphone now, but I kind of dig it. I like it. But I think this may be I keep saying the permanent setup, and then like I want to record in the other room because that chair is more comfortable. So anyway, but yes, when you guys watch this, please, please, please put a little comment. If you like this microphone screen setup, I don't know. Leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, all the little things that YouTube wants you to do, and I kind of need you to do. But definitely, definitely share. Please, please, please share. Let's try to get a big group. Halloween's on a Friday. So we may do something super spooky on Wednesday the 29th, and then you never know. We may do a little live something on Halloween. I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, for continuing to watch, being with us on Wednesday nights or Thursday mornings or whenever you get a chance to watch this. I am so grateful. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.